What's up, everyone? Today I want to go over a PowerShell script that I featured in a previous video when I talked about ForEach and CSV files and see how we can make some improvements to it to make it more PowerShell-y, if that's a word. What we'll do is go through and make 3 changes to it, including parameters, some error catching, and then modifying how we're making sure we're connected out to Microsoft Graph in order to create our users out in Active Directory. Let's go ahead and get started. First, in the script on lines 1 and 3, and then down here at the very end is where I'm managing a connection out to Microsoft Graph, which is the PowerShell module I'm using to create users out in Entra ID. Instead of force creating the connection like this and then disconnecting at the end, I'm going to change this just to where it checks to see if a connection exists. And if it doesn't, just exit the script or something like that and prompt the user to create a connection before they run the script. So first, let's go ahead and get rid of these first couple of lines, and we'll go ahead and get rid of disconnect graph here. And then at the very top, let's create a variable called connection. And there is a command called get mgcontext. This is going to show your current connection out to Microsoft Graph. It'll show you what scopes, what user account you're connected to, and everything like that. In fact, let's just go ahead and run this down here in my PowerShell window, and you can see nothing comes back. What I like to do is if there's a command like this to see if you have a current connection to something, maybe it's Microsoft Teams or Exchange Online, SharePoint, I'll save the output of that command to a variable. And then we can just check to see if that variable has a value. So in this case, I'm going to say null equals connection. Basically meaning, does the connection have any value into it? And if that is true, that means we don't have a connection. Let's do a write warning message. And let's say you must run connect mggraph before running this script. And then we will let's do an exit. This should be a very minor change of just saying, if you're not connected out to Microsoft Graph, you don't have that connection details, we are going to exit the script. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a try real quick. We'll say new Entra user. And there it goes, perfect. You must run connect mggraph before running the script. Let's go ahead and do that. And then off screen, I'm authenticating here. We'll finish that up. We come back, welcome to Microsoft Graph. And just to show you, let's go back and run get mgcontext, and you can see all my context here, the account I'm connected with, what scopes I'm connected under, and so on. So perfect. The next part of the script we want to improve is line 8 here. We're importing the user data that we want to run through in the form of a CSV file. I still have that example CSV file over here on the right, just has first name, last name, department, and some information in it. What we have right now is the path to the CSV file is hard-coded. So if you ever wanted to use a different file, you'd have to come in here and modify the script to point to that. And that's not very PowerShell-like. What we want to do is have a parameter where we can pass in different files and not have this hard-coded. In order to pass in the file that we want to use in the script, we need to define a parameter that includes it could just be the file name or the full path, depending on the location where you're running the script from. And to get started, we need to define a parameter. So we're going to use the param keyword and some open and close parentheses. Then we need to give our parameter a name. I usually like to do, let's say, user data file. Now at this point, this parameter is valid. We should be able to use it. We would run new Entra user -user data file and give the path to the file name. We do want to be a little more specific in our parameters here and define what type of data we're expecting to come into this. Is it going to be a number, an object, a string, or anything like that? In this case, it's going to be a string. Some people will put the data type definition right in front of the variable name here or the parameter name here. I like to just put it on a separate line like this. That's just my preference. This or this are both valid. I think I like seeing the parameter name there on the far left just so I can visually see it a little bit better for me. In its current state, user data file is not mandatory, or we don't need it to run the script. But in our case, it is the most important part of the script that we have here. So we want to make sure that when people run this, that they use this parameter and provide a value. What we can do is then add a parameter definition here, a parameter attribute. Now, at a minimum, you could just leave it like this. It just says parameter. We don't have any other attributes in it right now, but we want to make sure this is a required parameter. So as you can see, start typing, and we now make it mandatory. So now if I were to try to run this again, it is going to prompt and say you need to provide the path to the user data file, and it won't let me run it. So let me Control-C out of here and clear the screen. Now that we've got our parameter, we need to actually use it. So here we're going to replace our path, and we will just say user data file. There are some additional checks we could do within the parameter definition itself. We could have a validate script that will test the path of the user data file that we pass into it and make sure it exists. Or we could do something similar down here. We could try to do the import. In fact, what does that look like real quick? If we do it, CSV path C does not exist, some file.csv, that does error out like that. There is some built-in error catching there, maybe. If it tries to import it and it doesn't exist, hopefully it's bad enough for a terminating error that the script would then exit out. Right now, I'm fine with this. If it doesn't keep going, then the ForEach is not going to iterate through any data. So we're good to go there. All right, so far we have our parameter definition. We changed up how we're making sure we're connected out to Microsoft Graph before we continue. We've got our ForEach, everything is good there. The last thing I want to take a look at is our command here on line 37 to actually go and create the user. Generally, creating users should be pretty straightforward. Hopefully you don't run into any issues. When I was recording the last video where I first featured this script, I did run into an error because all the users I was trying to create already existed, and the errors it threw out weren't very intuitive or anything like that. What I want to do here is just add a try-catch block on line 37 to make running into errors just a little more visually good in our script here. I do have another video on the channel going over try-catch blocks. I'll include a link to it down in the description. Let's put in our basic try-catch block, and we'll start building this out. And then I'm going to add error action stop. Just in case this is not a terminating error, I do want it to stop and go into my catch block. Let's create a variable here. I'm going to call it error message. I'm going to use get error newest one. So this, I'm just saving the error message out to a variable, and then we'll do write warning message. And let's just do error message right now. Let me go ahead and save that. Okay, so basic try-catch block. We're just going to output a warning message here of what the exception was. Clean up our spacing a little bit. Now, if we're looking over at our CSV file, we see the Jeff Brown account is the first account it's going to try and create. I do know that account already exists, and I want to test my error catching here a little bit. So let's add just the first index in our imported data here in our array. Adding the index like this will just limit to the first item in our user data variable, which is all the data inside our CSV file. So I know this is going to error out. Let's do new intra user data file, example, let's see, CSV. So this should error out. Perfect. So this is the message that I got the other day, but it says another object with the same value for property user principal name already exists. That's a really fancy way of saying this user already exists. What I wanted to do in this case is just try and clean this message up a little bit and give me a custom message that maybe makes a little more sense within the script. So I'm going to highlight our message here, and inside the catch, you can do any number of things that you want to in order to handle the error. So what I'm going to do is say if error message, We'll say I like, put some wildcards around it. Here, all I'm doing is if the error message is like this string phrase here, another object with the same value, I'm going to change my warning message here. What I'm going to do is output that this specific user already exists. Fix up my quotes here. Already exists. Now, if our error message isn't like that, we'll just output the warning message here as usual. Okay, so just go back through, try it. We're going to get our latest error message. If the error message is like this phrase here, we're just going to output a different message. We'll put in the name. We'll just say it already exists, else write out whatever warning message we have. So let's go ahead and try to run this again. So it's a little more useful. Normally, if this ran through, we wouldn't know what user existed, but now we know Jeff.Brown at this address already exists. But for the rest of our users, it should be able to go through and create them just fine. This is also helpful if you're outputting to a log file, if you're creating a whole bunch of users, or if you need to log, what users it's creating and everything. Okay, so with our updated script file here, let me get rid of our 0 index. I want it to run through the rest of my users here as it runs. Pull this up here. Perfect. Yeah. Did those last 3 really quick, and we saw Jeff.Brown already exist, but the rest of our users were created successfully. That does it for this video. Let's go back through real quick what we did. First, we added a parameter so we could import different CSV files that we needed for our user data. It wasn't hard-coded. We changed how we checked for connections. We weren't forcing to connect out and then disconnecting because maybe you're already connected to Microsoft Graph in your current PowerShell session. And then we added just a little bit of error handling here. We put it in a try-catch block. I had a specific error that I wanted to handle a little bit differently and just output that this user already exists. Otherwise, we just output the error message and go on from there. The error catching here can evolve as you run through and try the script more often. You can continue to modify the catch block here or find a specific exception type that you maybe want to handle, but otherwise, I think this script is in a lot better shape. One other improvement might be not passing any file with the user information, but maybe you want to run new enter user and then provide like the first name, last name, department. That would definitely be another way to make the script more dynamic, and maybe we could save that for another video. Otherwise, I think coming up next, we'll take a deeper dive into parameters and maybe take a look at hash tables as well. So stick around for that. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.